leaders are what I found over the years too, and research and going out with all these great anglers on the last book project, which is the hunt for giant trout. I found that a lot of times you're going to benefit if you make a leader out of Maxima or even tippet material, and you build it, 6 to 8 feet or 3 to 6 feet. So my normal rig is 3 to 6 feet. If it's 6 feet, I'll use a Spro swivel size 10 in the middle.
That was Landon Mayer talking about his terminal tackle for streamers. It's go time. This is episode number 48 of the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today. We'll help you on your fly fishing journey with classic stories covering steelhead fishing, fly tying, and much more.
I had one big call to action for you this week. I have a little survey I want you to take if you have time. This will help me better understand who is listening out there and help me kind of guide more of the discussion. So the link will be in the show notes. It'll be at survey.lipson.com/wetflyswing. So don't worry about writing that down. Just go click over in the show notes and you'll see a link right at the top of the page. And that would help a ton. I'm going to run this survey here and then I'll get the information together and then I'll be able to better, like I said, direct the which way the show is going. It's right now, I think I'm hearing some positive feedback from everybody, but I would like to get a little more just kind of where's everybody coming from, and kind of the demographic, just basic demographic stuff. So thanks again for taking a little bit of time to do that, and look forward to talking to you soon. How's it going, everyone? Thanks for stopping by the Fly Fishing Show. In today's episode, I interview Landon Mayer, a guide, author, and one of the leaders on the fly fishing circuit today. We talk about how to catch finicky trout, why he carries 2 streamer rods, and what to do when a fish chases your fly but doesn't take. Landon talks about using swivels, what you should be imitating, and the best streamer resources. Don't miss this one as Landon discusses the terminology between fly fishing industry and culture, and which one he thinks is the correct version. Before I get into the episode today, I wanted to quickly thank our sponsors. Ascent Fly Fishing has customized fly box selections that they put together for your unique stream. These aren't just flies in a box, but they analyze the insect community, do a summary, and provide you with the exact patterns that are in your stream when you're ready to fish. Just go to ascentflyfishing.com and use the coupon code WETFLYSWING to grab 10% off your next order. We are also brought to you by the original tie right, which holds flies and hooks securely so you can tie your fly on with little effort. The tie right senior holds hook sizes 2 through 14, and the junior holds hook sizes 14 through 24. Tie right can help you tie clinch knots and modified clinch knots and many other knots to suit your needs. Head over to tieright.com and get started today. That's ty-rite.com. So, without further ado, here's Landon Mayer. How's it going, Landon?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. Good to have you on the show.
Yeah, it's great to be on the show.
Yeah, we've been chatting. I think all these, whenever I'm setting up these interviews, it always takes a little while to connect with people. And again, it's always funny because I'm looking back like, okay, now how did I connect with you? And I think now that I think about it, I think it was through Davey Watton, who I had on in a previous episode, and he was awesome. And yeah, I think he chatted, mentioned your name, and then as I got in and started digging around, I just noticed that you had some books published out there, and then along with magazines and a bunch of stuff. So I want to dig into all that. Before we get started, maybe you can just start us off talking about how you got into fly fishing and how you kind of got to where you are now.
Yeah, no problem. And again, thanks for having me on the show. And for me, the passion really started when I was a kid and just enjoying the outdoors with my family. And we had friends with the family that were into fly fishing, and there was a local shop on Colorado Avenue in Colorado Springs called the Angler's Covey. And I remember going in there when I was young and just being amazed by the amount of flies and all the talk and hype about the fish that were caught that day, and ended up going out with my mom and my brother and a friend of ours. And from there, it just kind of took hold. I mean, I just enjoyed being outside and hearing the water flow and seeing the fish rise. And from there was off and running, and haven't looked back since. Really enjoyed it.
Nice. And have you spent most of your time now, in recent years, I guess, in Colorado, but over your kind of career, is that where you've been mostly?
It has mostly. I guided for a year on the Naknek River in Alaska with Naknek anglers, and that was 16 weeks. It was an amazing experience. I posted a few saltwater trips and did a lot on the fly and the salt in my 20s, and do a lot of teaching and whatnot on local waters throughout the state of Colorado. But yeah, it's really been a pleasure. I started my senior year out of high school, and from there just haven't looked back and really enjoyed every minute of it. So I'm looking forward to the years ahead.
Cool. And so as you're coming out of high school, getting in, did you, how did you get your foot in the door as far as guiding, and did you jump right into the guiding?
Yeah, no, it was actually a great experience. Some of the people I met along the way were guides through Anglers Covey, and then there was another service called Colorado Fishing Adventures, and I ended up going up and speaking with Dusty Sprague, who was the manager at the time and has also been a board of governor for the Federation of Fly Fishers since. And he was kind enough to give me an opportunity to start part-time, and I was 17, getting ready to turn 18. And lucky for me, there were some greats and legends, actually, that were guiding at the time. And one of those individuals was Ed Engel, and a few others in the guide service I was wanting to join. And from there, whenever they called and needed a day off, I was quick to jump on the trip, and that's pretty much how everything started.
Oh, nice. That's cool. Yeah, I just actually was chatting with Ed via email. I had the episode before this one, I had John Gierach on, and obviously, anybody that's read John's stuff has heard Ed's name in those stories. So,
yeah,
so it's cool. I've
exactly.
Continued to connect some of the dots here, which is a big reason, I wanted to do this show, to kind of, connect all the dots. Some of the new, like yourself, you're kind of, kind of in that, I guess, the newer kind of whatever you want to call it, middle generation, and then you got folks that are just starting out below you, and yeah, it's pretty cool. It's, I guess, it's all about that mentorship, right?
It is, yeah. I mean, honestly, what I've learned and found over the years now is that this sport is all about giving back, and just that mentorship, or being able to help out and kind enough to help out another angler on and off the water is what helps the sport grow. And I know the people I've looked up to, the Ed Ingles, and my other mentor is John Barr, who put me under his wing and opened some doors for me. And, trying to do the same for others too, that I see in high school or middle school coming up. And hopefully that continues. I think that's the legacy that Lefty left us with, and other greats as well.
Yeah, cool. And talking about Ed again, I think I'm going to have him on. I'm not quite sure when. It'll be down the line, hopefully this year. But anything that sticks out as far as, what, a big influence of what I know he talks kind of known for, I guess, kind of the small flies. Is there anything specific that he kind of influenced you on?
I think for me, it was watching Ed present, and then from there actually meeting Ed, seeing how he worked on the water. And he has this very calm presence about him. And, I think for me, that was one of the biggest factors as an individual starting to guide, is that you really need to assess the situation in front of you, remain calm, and then understand that, and the fact that he deals in ties and works with a lot of small flies, that's pretty much our game on tailwaters here for the South Platte. So that was one of the key things I took away from Ed. And since then, just his professionalism too at the shows and everywhere else I have a chance to spend time with him and travel, it's always remained that. So that's one of the biggest influences he had, was just remain calm, evaluate what's in front of you, take the time to let things develop, and then from there start to react as a guide.
Yeah. No, I love how you mentioned the small flies and kind of talking about Ed there, and how, I guess, in the tailwater you're using them there, as you said. But today I was hoping to dig into a little more on some of the streamers. And, when you think about streamers, do we ever, because I guess the first thing that pops normally in, I guess, my mind is a humongous, a big fly. But do we ever think of streamers? Do we ever use small streamers?
Oh, absolutely. I think, that's one of the biggest things that I've learned. I would probably say over the last 10 years, the biggest eye-opener is there's a time and place to match the food or the forage to where you need something large. But when fish get technical or they get selective, downsizing is really one of the key ways to get the fish to react. And in fact, my most popular bug I've been fishing with and have on the market now is my Mayer's Mini Leech, and it's a micro pine squirrel leech that's only an inch long. But the beauty of it, you get that supple action through the tail of the fly, the pulsating action in the front. Because it is so small and you can tuck it in tight quarters, I find that fish react the same way they do on a larger fly. And it really is nice to be able to adapt from big to small and still get that aggressive take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that is the challenge when you start talking about these big monster streamers, is just casting them, right?
Right. Oh yeah. It's an art. It's an art in its own right.
So now, so maybe we can just dig in a little bit to, talking about your home river there, or maybe just talk about,
sure.
If you're going to fish streamers, where you might fish them, and just dig into a little bit about, how you get into fish with streamers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's nice when you discuss streamers, you talk about trying to get fish to react. And one of the biggest things I teach anglers on the water is trying to make sure that you're there during the right conditions. And for streamers, a lot of times that can be low light or it can be high water, but you can still be effective in small flows and bright sun. You just have to find out where the fish are hiding on any waterway. And I usually try different things, like I'll try a larger streamer, see if the fish reacts to that. If not, then I'll change color. And if I still don't get a reaction, then I'll start to downsize. So it's almost opposite of the way you can think about some other effective ways to approach trout with nymphs and drives, where a lot of times we're trying to think small. I'll think large first on streamers, then start to downsize and see how the fish react. And the other key thing I teach too, which I think is important, Dave, is that you want to cover a wealth of water. Usually, in my opinion, if a fish is going to react to a streamer, you get that reaction within the first 3 to 5 presentations. And then you can start fanning water and moving downstream, or you can hit different runs and really just cover a wealth of water. And if you're drifting or floating, just floating and hitting banks and making sure that you're covering miles.
No, that's cool. So and what's the technique like? Are you casting up, across, like swinging these? How are you fishing these typically?
Yeah, so the swinging method is when I started doing streamers pretty hard, and I would say that's 15 years ago. I really started diving into it and trying to understand more above and beyond what I would do when I would cast out a streamer. When I first started fishing streamers, it was usually cast across, let the streamer swing downstream, and then retrieve it back. But now I've found that you can have even different ways to deliver, where if you're swinging downstream and you retreat back, then the fish looks at it as an escaping meal. But then if the fish are incredibly aggressive, you can cast up and across and essentially bring that streamer head on to where the fish will see it coming head on to them.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden they react and try to bite or attack. So there's numerous ways. I usually think down and across or up and across.
Okay. And then what about, is there some dead drifting too?
Sure. Yep. The technique for that, what I found works pretty well, is the dead swing, where if the fish are, let's say there's a fish holding in a bucket or a drop line, heavy riffle or seam dropping into a deep run, I'll start at the beginning where I just cast out, do a mend, let it dead drift, and then once it hits the shelf, if I don't get a reaction, at the end of the drift, I'll let it swing and then add some twitches to it. So that way you can identify if the fish wants it still or if it wants it on the move.
Oh, cool. Cool. And can you describe a little bit, just for those people who haven't been on the South Platte, just to give us an example of a river and are you fishing streamers there quite a bit?
Oh, yeah, we mix it up. It's definitely all three disciplines for sure.
Okay. Okay.
It's pretty small. I mean, as far as describing the river, I would say on average, the tailwater is broken up into 5 sections. And what's cool about the South Platte is that each section of tailwaters, it flows differently. So it's a different backdrop, a different run, different structure. So it's like fishing 5 rivers within one system. Yeah, it's really neat, and it allows you to think and forces you to think, and in my opinion, become a better angler. But what we're dealing with most of the time is width of the waters anywhere from 5 to 25, 30 feet.
Oh, wow.
And then the depth, it's pretty narrow, pretty
totally
shallow. And then the depth can be anywhere from, I'd say, 2 to 3 feet, dropping into buckets that can be 8 to 10 feet deep. And the challenge with streamers on this water, Dave, is how do you effectively present streamers as you're moving and quickly go from shallow 2 to 3 feet and then effectively deliver in water that's 6 to 8 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the challenge in between really comes up. And for me, the trick and the secret there is to carry 2 streamer rods and be double fisted. Yep.
So you have
and
one.
The reason that works is you can. Yep.
Yeah. You just have one.
Shallow and deep.
Okay. And then can you, maybe just talk about how you're saying that, how it works, and then the difference in, I guess, weight and the setup there on the 2.
Yeah, you bet. So the line I use for shallow water is the Sonar Clear tip with Scientific Angler, and it's a 30-foot head. That's a clear tip. It's an intermediate sinking line, which means it's sinking at 1 to 2 inches per second. And if I attach an unweighted streamer, I can deliver that through shallow water without snagging bottom. And then for deep water, because we don't have long extended runs, a lot of times we'll do a floating line to a long fluorocarbon leader and then a heavily weighted fly.
Okay.
That way, when you cast at the drop line, it descends all the way down to the deep run, and you can get down there quickly, and you don't have to worry about belly sag from a sink tip on the fly line.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, but you're still either swinging or casting up and coming down to you, or dead drifting with the dry line.
Yeah, with the dry line, you can dead drift. You have to be careful because you'd only want to go up maybe 2 feet above the lip where it drops off to deep water. But most of the time, these large predatory fish we find at the head of runs or at the tail out. So we're trying to cover both zones. But you can, I would say, more of a retrieve with the heavy rig. And then for the lighter rig is when you can dead drift. And then as it's gradually sinking down, let it swing into the depths of the deep water, and then swing or twitch and retrieve it back.
Okay. And then when you're using the leader just with the dry line and the weighted fly, so it's just a heavily weighted with like tungsten bead, or you're not really using, are you using split shot on your leader?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, if you needed to, if all else fails, you could definitely put a 1 or O shot of 2 pieces of split shot above your streamer, 6 to 12 inches. So it's still semi-disguised. It's not right on the head of the fly. And that way, if need be, you could sink a light-weighted streamer. But most of the time when we're tying, we either do 1 large tungsten cone, or it's also common that we'll put 2 tungsten cones on and then hide the second cone with any type of a collar that can really represent the fibers, and you can still get the depth. But those flies tend to sink fairly fast, or even dumbbell-ized to the bottom.
Sure, yeah, the thing's getting down there quick.
Yeah, it's like a missile.
Yeah, totally. Okay, well, I wanted to touch a little bit on some of the other kind of rods and some of the other information there. But before we do, I was hoping you can maybe, just because like on the history of streamers, and I mean, I know they've been around, there is a long history. I'm not sure if you could talk a little bit about like where we are today, and like how is it different today from where maybe when you think of the traditional, the ghosts and some of the old patterns, like has it changed much over the years?
Yeah, it's interesting when you say that, because, I mean, you look at, like, the Black Ghost with Herbert Welch, and then you look at, the Mudler minnow dating back to the 1937 time frame, and even, like, the late 1800s with some of the streamers dating back to the Orvis Company in Vermont. I think they called it, like, the long-shanked bucktails.
Yeah.
Amazing to go back that far. But I think it has, what's interesting to me, I'll share a little story real quick. I'm working on a new book that's going to be out this winter season. And while I was working on the book project, it was fortunate enough that I was in touch with Dave Whitlock. And Dave and Emily are such great people. He was kind enough to share a lot of his information. And one of the things that blew me away when he was talking and describing streamer fishing on the White River is he sent me a letter where he drew his streamer imitation, and the streamer he was throwing was 6 to 9 inches long.
Jeez.
And the tail of the streamer was black schlappen, about 6 inches. And what was really unique is that he used tiger wire all the way to the tail end of the schlappen, and then he connected a small treble hook as a stinger.
Wow.
And then the head of the fly had elk hair in black. So basically, this was an articulated streamer with a stinger hook, and this is a fly that he was using for large browns back in the early 80s.
Wow.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. So
Yeah.
when I look at that and then I look at streamers today, it's amazing how much they evolved and how many more materials we have access to. And, you know, individuals now like Blaine Chocolate and others like Craven and John Barr, when you look at some of their streamers that are articulated now with spines, especially the Game Changer, it's unbelievable how well these flies move. And I joke, but it's true. It's almost like watching a banjo minnow.
Wow. So basically that's the story, is that, you know, we have a lot more materials, and the flies aren't as heavy or as bulky as they used to be, just because we have kind of better materials, and we can get the same action.
Yeah, same action materials. And I think, you know, the credit goes to the mind behind the designer. I mean, these individuals that hunt predators on their home waters, and they have to, you know, try to figure out a way to make their fly imitate the bait fish or something injured that's going to trigger these fish to come up and attack. And, you know, like Chad Johnson, when I interviewed him on the White River, he's got his fly, which is the Sluggo and the Big Johnson. Those two streamers are, you know, they're lightweight, they articulate in the middle, but because you have such a large size and they move so well in the water, they look like they're articulated and injured. And I think my personal favorite when we're dealing with larger streamers like that is probably the Drunken Disorderly by Tommy Lynch. That's an amazing bug that's pretty lightweight and it really doesn't move well on the surface and even below.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll leave a link. I'll get a link to at wetflyswing.com/48 with some of the flies that you're talking to. I'll have some, maybe link out to some YouTube videos and things like that so people can take a look at them. And,
yeah, no, absolutely. They're good streamers. And the one more that I would mention is, or the two more that I would mention is, one is the Meat Whistle with John Barr. That's an unbelievable streamer that really does produce well, in not only for trout, but for bass and carp. And then the other one is Killer Gaulop's Tip Set, which is an awesome streamer where you have foam on the back end of the fly, and it gives it a lot of movement and action subsurface, below the water surface, and even when you go to deep water scenarios where that tail tries to float or kick back up, it's got some unique action to it.
So yeah, I also want to pick up, I want to dig a little more into the streamers for sure, but I had a note here to talk about selective trout and how to catch them. I'm not sure, do you have, is that something you've written about in the past, or is that something you can touch on as far as, and maybe with streamers you can target selective trout, but maybe you can explain how you get into fish that maybe are, I don't know if they've been pounded a little bit or just kind of a little finicky.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's something that now, especially with the popularity and growth in our sport, that we all have to deal with. But no, I've really dealt with a selective trout, and my big thing is sight fishing. And I wrote a book, Sight Fishing for Trout, in 2009, and went into the details above and beyond just seeing a fish rise. But when you're dealing with selective trout, and I think this is where we come into the phase of downsizing the streamer. That's one of the ways I've found that fish will react. And the best way for me to describe that is let's say we go to a run that's 20 feet wide and 20 feet long, and it's clear water, and we cast a large streamer into the run, and then we retrieve it back, and then while we retrieve, the fish will chase to our feet and then blazes off, chase and then takes off. And it almost seems like the fish wants to eat, but it's really not willing. And that's when, if you downsize and then try to maximize movement in the streamer without forcing the fish out of its comfort zone, is one of the secrets I've found with selective trout. So that's where something like my Mayer's Mini Leech or a smaller streamer, muddler minnow, you can really maximize the action of a streamer, even if it's just dead drifting or you're twitching it, when you're doing it in the area of deep water or around structure where the fish feel safe.
Okay, so so they're basically sticking in their zone that they like. They're not leaving that, but you're just kind of given an offering that's a little, not quite as big and bulky and a little more subtle.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I think is important to remember is, aggressive trout are usually very large trout, and trout just by nature can be lazy. I mean, they will chase and they will kill their meal, but a lot of times they're just allowing that food or meal to come to them And if you supply more of a head-on direction with your streamer and then maximize the movement, then the fish doesn't feel like it has to move out of its comfort zone because it's all right in front of them, just like you're feeding them a Big Mac.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. They're lazy. That's a good one to remember for sure. Okay. Okay. Well, let's, and actually, Tyler, who he had asked a question out in the audience, and this is exactly what we were kind of talking about earlier. But, as far as we talked a little bit about the line, so as far as the rod setup, weight and length, and maybe just go through that entire and then down to your more a little bit on the terminal tackle and just finish up the entire setup if somebody wanted to get started fishing some bigger flies. And how big of streamers are you going to be able to cast with these setups?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in the last 5 years, I've changed the way that I used to view fly rods and reels. And what I mean by that is I used to be a big fan of stiff, fast action rods. And I thought that the faster the rod was, the more stiff the rod was, the more power, and I could generate more speed. But what I found is when you're streamer fishing, a lot of this is based on feel. You need to feel the current, feel the take when the fish comes over and attacks the fly. And that's why when I switched over to Winston rods, which is a medium fast and more of a mid flex, I get that feel, which I think is important,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That plays a big part. Yep. And then when dealing with casting too, as far as trying to deliver the streamer, last year was a big eye opener for me when I was on the South Holston with Blaine Chocolate and good friend of ours and editor Jay Nichols. Watching Blaine toss the 7 to 8 inch streamers 50 feet under cover on the river's edge was incredible. But a lot of that was based on the same thing where you feel the load, you know how you can manipulate the line and the cast. And a lot of that is the medium fast or just knowing that rod's getting maximum flex and maximum load. So that played a big part. And my go-to weight for streamers is a 7 weight. Even when I'm fishing tailwaters or if I'm moving to larger waterways like Pyramid Lake or the White River, a 7 weight's a nice in between I found, and you also get the power with the lift, but you can also achieve the feel. And there are times where you need to upsize that maybe to an 8 weight or a 9 weight, but I'm a fan of a 7 weight, and my go-to stick for Winston is the B3 Plus, which is it's a medium fast, but the Jungle series has more lift and power on the backbone. So that way I get the supple tip when the fish take, I can lift from the butt section and then really apply maximum power. And matching that with a Bauer reel, large arbor reel that supplies a lot of movement and space when you're gaining line, but you want smooth release as well, because while you can strip fish in on streamers, a lot of these fish are big and strong and they can take off. And then for fly lines, it was what I mentioned before, Sonar Clear tip, and that's intermediate sinking with the unweighted streamer, and then a floating line with a long fluorocarbon leader for a weighted streamer. And then if I'm using sinking lines, I'm a fan of Scientific Angler's triple density line, where you can go in different ways of maximizing depth control, and you eliminate the sag or the belly of the sinking line or the sink tip line. So a type 3 or 200 to 300 grain sink tip on those lines just really does cast well, because you have that taper and you also get more control with that sink at an angle kind of 45 degrees.
Okay.
And then moving to leaders, leaders are what I found over the years too, and research and going out with all these great anglers on the last book project, which is the hunt for giant trout. I found that a lot of times you're going to benefit if you make a leader out of Maxima or even Tippet material, and you build it, 6 to 8 feet or 3 to 6 feet. So my normal rig is 3 to 6 feet. If it's 6 feet, I'll use a Spro swivel size 10 in the middle, so I don't have twist and I can get more movement out of my streamer and it doesn't mess up the leader with coils and twists. And then attaching all of my streamers at the end of that leader with a loop knot. That way when you're dead drifting, you still get movement and undulation through the fly.
Yeah, I love
and that's kind of the whole the whole rig.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I love the loop knot for sure. And then, and are you doing like a 9 foot rod or longer?
9 feet, and you could go longer, but I found, to have control in the short game and also the long game, I tend to use 9 feet, and I've even had anglers go down to 8 feet to where you can punch and turn over. And there's a video project I'm also working on called Mastering the Short Game out with Headwaters Media Group. And when we were doing this streamer footage, it really is amazing how much more control you can have in a short range or distance with a shorter rod. And I think the most important thing is also have more lifting power. So I would say on average, it's usually for streamers 9 to 8 feet, but you could always maximize that and go up to 10 feet as well. And when you're dealing with, swinging or switch rods or spay, then you want to start looking at longer distances where you go from 10 to 11 all the way up to 13, 15-foot rods. So It really also depends on the waters that you fish. But for me, it's usually 9 feet on average.
Yeah, because if you're fishing a 30-foot or less stream, you don't need a super long rod, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. And yeah, I wanted to dig a little bit into, you mentioned the giant trout and the stuff you've been doing there, some of the work, and you've got a lot going on,
Sure.
Videos and stuff like that. I'm curious to hear if there's a story that helps talk about how you kind of got to where you are. I mean, sounds like you've got, you're fully in doing all this work and all these companies and stuff. Is there anything when you look back that you kind of think like, well, I could have gone one way or the other, and now you're here?
Oh, no, absolutely. The biggest thing for me is it was really how I was raised. I mean, I'm just a person that when I wake up every morning, I really am thankful and grateful to be doing this, make a living and help support my family, my beautiful wife, Michelle, and our 4 kids. Without her support, there's no way that I'd even exist on the water, because she has to be incredibly understanding and deal with my fish stories and my obnoxious behavior when I can't fish.
Yep.
So that plays a part. But for me, it was just hard work. A good work ethic was key. Honesty was key. And just really, as a guide, I just try to make sure that I customize every day for that angler. So everybody's important, whether they're just starting in this sport or they've been around for a long time. And it just really, things started falling into place when I had that mentality. And again, that goes back to Ed Engel and John Barr and the people that were kind enough to give me that influence. So I've just really tried to stay that same path and keep myself humble, which my wife's great at doing as well. And from there, just, trying to advance and pull more fish. Yeah,
no, that makes sense. I think I always think about that. I love hearing the stories because, there's a lot of kids out there that probably, at your same age took a different turn and didn't run into the Ed Engels and have the positive influences and maybe aren't in a different place. And so, yeah, I think just having something to do and being around the right people is a big part of it. So that's pretty cool to hear that for sure.
No, it's cool. And I think for our youth too, the generation of anglers coming up that are in middle school and high school, they're incredible. I mean, going out with, and, having the luxury of being a guide, one of the things I get to see is anglers that I may take out when they're 12 years old, and then all of a sudden they're 18 going off to college. And when they come back and they've graduated college, they're unbelievable anglers. Yeah. And I think our sport is in really good hands for that. And whenever I see that, and if I know of somebody or know a route that they could take or something they could do to help maximize their potential for success, then that's what I mentioned earlier about giving back. I'm always willing and trying to come up with an answer and help them out any way I can.
Let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. The original Tyrite is a long-standing accessory loved by fly fishermen for decades. It's an accessory you won't live without once you try it. No more drop flies or hooked fingers. If you haven't seen this tool yet, it's pretty simple. It looks like a pin, a little ballpoint pin with a retractable clip that allows you to basically hook the bend of your fly in, so you don't have to worry about fumbling with the tiny little fly or hooking your finger. And you just kind of finish the knot like spinning spaghetti on a fork. Just quickly do your twists and stick the tip it through, and you're good to go. All parts are manufactured and assembled in the USA with a 100% lifetime guarantee. And I like to use the example of the tiny little blue-winged olive in the wintertime. And that's always a good example because, your fingers are cold and sometimes it's hard to hold those little guys. But the Tyrite makes this easy. Using a size 18 BWO, you'd be using the Tyrite Junior, and it just makes it a snap. So just wanted to give a heads up for everyone. This is a great tool from a great company. I'm excited to have them on, and want to get you guys to head over to tyrite.com and check it out today. That's ty-rite.com. We are also brought to you by Ascent Fly Fishing. Do you struggle at times to tie the right fly on the end of your fly line? What if you had a biologist or entomologist with you next to you telling you exactly what was going on in the stream and what you need to put on? That's basically what Ascent Fly Fishing does with their custom fly box selections. And these guys aren't just a one-trick pony. They cover rivers all over the country, from Oregon over to Colorado, out to New York. They've got basically the entire country, and they're building on from what they've got. And I've got a great example because I have a box for one of my local streams, and it's super awesome and neatly organized. It even comes with a card that shows which rows each of the flies are, breaks down dry flies on one side, nymphs on the other, and talks about different, categories of basically the orders of flies, mayflies, caddisflies. It's just really organized, and a lot of flies are on there, which were ones that weren't in my box. So I'm excited to get on that. And but yeah, you can head over and pick up a local selection from your stream. They have a 100% money back guarantee as well if you're not satisfied for any reason. So, I think it's time to cut the guesswork out of it. Head over to ascentflyfishing.com and use the coupon code WETFLYSWING to get 10% off your next order. That's ascentflyfishing.com, ASCENT flyfishing.com. Okay, back to the show. All right. Well, let's go to that topic about the the large trout or giant trout, however you want to say it. I mean, what is the and maybe we've talked a little bit about this, but finding those big trout. Is there some tips that you can provide to help others find some of those? And when we talk large, giant, what are we talking there? Is there a minimum size criteria? 20 inches, or what do you say?
I think that a large trout, it really is based on the water. I mean, you could be in a brookie pond and have a fish that comes out that's 15 inches, and that's a big fish, or you could be chasing a world record or potential on any given waterway. That I think does play a part. But for big trout in general, I think it's more of dealing with something or a creature, what it may seem like, is so smart and so wise that it's really the adrenaline rush in trying to fool that fish. And for the sake of streamers, I think, to be honest, yes, you can catch more and larger trout, but I think now with streamers, it's a way to not even think about the size, but think about how selective they are. Because I find that selective trout, when you're dealing with these small flies or these technical rigs, sometimes the answer is just to switch it up and throw meat right in front of them. They want steak and potatoes because they've been snacking all day on pretzels or cheese nips, and all of a sudden you throw this 7-inch streamer and that fish goes, oh, wow, I'm willing to take that. And, it can, what's funny about it too, is we're looking for a bigger, better fish. And then all of a sudden you're ripping that streamer through the run and a 12-inch fish attacks it. And you look at it like, how in the world is a 12-inch fish going to eat my 6-inch streamer?
Yeah,
right?
That's cool.
So it's kind of, I think it's that blend, but I would say even more than just looking for the largest, which we're all trying to do. We either want size or numbers, but I think it's really just trying to think outside of the box and go from selective to more aggressive behavior is one of the keys. And, Kelly Gaulop does a great job in talking and discussing predators and streamers, and I think that really does connect the dots very well.
Okay. And who are I think about the streamer. I mean, Kelly definitely is a guy that I've chatted with too, and I'm hoping to get on the show as well. I mean, he's a big streamer guy. Are there some other big people that kind of when you think of streamers, their names pop out?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot now. It's incredible. But I mean, it's amazing. Like Kelly, for sure. I remember, when I was in my 20s, I would always, and still do, have a chance to see his work and watch him present and tie his flies. And then since then, it's, Tommy Lynch with the D&D on the Pure Marquette, an amazing fly. a lot of movement and commotion. Blaine Chocolate is a big influence on the streamer game. Mike Schultz is a big influence. Chad Johnson's a big influence now. John Barr, Mike Lawson, and I think another cool fly, which works really well, is Charlie Craven's Double Gonga. And Charlie Craven has a huge influence on the tying industry. But really now, I mean, it's almost impossible. It's like trying to select a group of anglers that's really going big with streamers. There's so many great anglers doing great things on the vise, but I find a lot of the information from a designer and then start following them. And then if I connect and relate to their thought process and how they really approach throwing the streamer, or try to figure out how or why they deliver the fly the way they do or designed it the way they do, then I tend to follow that individual, and that really has an influence back on me.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and you mentioned, when you're trying to target some of these bigger fish, different techniques. I mean, when you have that streamer out there, maybe you can talk a little bit about if there are differences between when you're fishing for different fish species, and then what exactly are you imitating? I mean, are you imitating a kind of a fish most of the time, or are there other things that you're imitating with these streamers?
Yeah, and there it is. You hit it right on the head, Dave. That's the question: is what should I be imitating? And I think streamers start with the forage base. What food supply is the trout looking for, and why? And then once you find the food supply, try to figure out how it moves. Does it dart backwards and then pause like a crayfish, or does it dart off and continue to swim like a small fry? Is it a sculpin that wiggles and is one of the worst swimmers in the river on the bottom? That's the most important thing, is to research and preparation before you start throwing the streamer, because it's confusing as well. I mean, don't get it wrong. You look at the market and there's 100 streamers to choose from, and you're wondering, well, which one should I choose and why? And I think to simplify it is try dark and try light. And then once you figure out, does the fish want a dark streamer or a light streamer, then you can research the food supply and then try to match the color to the food supply. And that really is, I think, some of the best starting points in streamer fishing, where hopefully that will help anglers figure out what diet the trout want.
Gotcha. Yeah. So if you don't know, you kind of go in there thinking, okay, I'll try light, and that might be imitating more of your little smaller trout fry or something like that, and then or you go dark, where you're imitating more of the sculpin, and then you also have the sculpin, the big bulbous or the bigger head, and just the body morphology, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's where you start dissecting. Is it a slim profile, a fat head, a thin head? All that comes into play. And you can, what's cool now is you can literally Google what the forage base is, look at a video, look at a photograph, and then start to look in your box at home and then pull out 6 streamers that look to represent or mimic that very well. And then that's kind of the starting point. But the simple details is what I always teach clients on the water. Light and dark is going to tell you immediately what the fish want to start, whether they like to be attracted or they like the dark. And that can play a factor on clarity of water, the amount of light, low light versus bright light. So that really does allow you to start investigating on your own and developing your own theories or concepts and how you can get fish to react to streamers better.
Yeah. So basically, just like anything we talk about here, it's a little bit of, getting on the stream and testing some things, but really observing, we've talked about that a lot, observing what's going on.
Yeah.
Testing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Which is fun too, because you see them, that's the question: is the fish chase my streamer, wouldn't eat it, but then that's what haunts you that evening after, and then that's where you make the judgment call. Do I call in sick to work? Do I go out the next day to chase that fish again?
Exactly. No, that's cool.
Yeah, the tug is the drug, man. That's for sure.
Totally. Well, you've managed to make your work, your passion, your work, so it makes it a little easier for you. And now guiding is pretty much, that's what you're doing the bulk of your time during the week.
Yeah, pretty much. I guide, around 200 days a year, and then I do the speaking tours at clubs and shows during the winter months, and I host some trips during the winter, and I try to do lessons and classes after hours. So it is a way of life on the fly, but guiding for me is very important. And that's one of the reasons I didn't get into retail as much in this sport, is I wanted to be on the water, because the challenge is, adjusting every day to the conditions, but also adjusting every day to what your client needs or what you need from your client to make it a successful day. And it really is. Guiding is all about preparation. It's how you prepare for the next day mentally, physically, even your emotions come into play. So I've always enjoyed that challenge of guiding. And, over the last, it's been over 20 years now. I can't believe it. And I look back and think I'm just as excited now as I was at the beginning. So the passion's still there. And as long as I still have that passion, Dave, I'll continue to do it. But I really do like the challenge of guiding. I think it's well worth the effort.
Yeah, nice. And have you had over your 20-year career is that like a big challenge or a big struggle or a big setback, anything pop out to you that, maybe made you think like, well, maybe I'm not cut out for this?
Oh, well, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think this year was probably one of my most challenging seasons, and not so much that I wasn't cut out for it, but it really was, I think the frustration was that we had a lot of issues come up with water temperature, flooding, all these natural occurrences. And, it's one thing when there's fish in the river and you're trying to get that fish to feed, but it's a whole different ballgame when there's literally no fish in the river or minimal numbers, and then you try to find success. And I think that was the most challenging thing to deal with. So it wasn't like you had numerous options. It was, find 3 or 4 adult fish, and if it didn't come together or you didn't bring your A game to try to help your client out, it could make for a rough day. So the challenge there was making it a successful day, but the reward was it humbles you quick to where when you think you know everything, you go home and you're like, okay, back to the drawing board.
Yeah. And was that what do you think was the biggest thing you learned is that in that whole process this year?
Yeah. So for me, the biggest thing I learned was just really being more patient than I've ever been and allow the fish to become comfortable. So instead of getting to the water early and just diving right into a deep run, I tried to find selected trout and where they were holding. And then some of these trips, we had to start at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning to try to get there when the temperatures were high 50s or low 60s. And that really was what it was based on, was trying to just wait for those hatches or trying to get in there before the water temperatures warmed up.
Cool. And were your clients still getting there 30 minutes or an hour before you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Some of the times they were.
Yeah, I know. I've talked to people before, that said that. Yeah, the clients are so jacked up and excited. They're there. Yeah, that'd be an early morning.
You could test that though, and the way to test it is when you tell them to meet you at 4:35 in the morning or 4:45, and then all of a sudden everybody's getting there 2 minutes before, and you're hoping you can get that last pound of coffee before you take off.
Exactly. Cool. Well, let's. So as far as thinking about tips, I mean, we've talked about a few things here, but are there a couple of like your best streamer fishing tips or anything that comes to mind that, again, we talked about the whole setup and getting out there and targeting fish, but
Sure.
Is there anything we haven't talked about here?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with streamers is just, realizing that you have to get the fish to feed. And one of the best ways to do that is to feed the fish. And what I mean by that is just really understanding what the fish want, starting with, like we mentioned, the streamer, light and dark, matching the forage base, really identifying color. And then after that, how does that food supply move? So just really adapting and adjusting your retrieve to what the movement of the fly is. And sometimes it's short, sometimes it's long, fast and slow. But you really have to, it's almost like a chess game where you're trying to map out the river. And let's say we have a mile stretch. Sometimes I'll go to one run and I'll retrieve fast. Then the next run, I'll retrieve slow. Then the next run, I'll do short. Next run, I'll do long. So I'm not trying to mix up the retrieves in one run. I'm trying to do it in a wealth of water so that I could see the reaction from fresh targets, not just fish that have been cast to over and over again.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, it's a good way to approach it. And one of the other tips too, I've realized I learned a lot over the years when I've attended shows or I've spoken with conventional anglers on the water, people that are fishing, lures or tube jigs, conversations with them can really help out too, because they can, they've been cranking a lot of fish on a white tube jig, just slowly bouncing it on the bottom. That immediately told me that the fish want something light and I need to do a slow retrieve, so I'm crawling on the bottom. Things like that where you can just maximize your knowledge. And it doesn't always have to be on the fly. I mean, some of these bass anglers or conventional anglers have great methods and techniques that work as well.
Okay. Yeah, those are good. And when we talk about thinking about fly tying, you've mentioned a number of people and some great resources. I mean,
Sure.
are there any? I mean, I assume you tie some flies as well. Are there any tips as far as tying flies or materials, or if anybody wanted to tie up a few? Is there any kind of standard, maybe easier patterns you can get started with?
Yeah, I think some of the easier patterns. I enjoy tying the John Barr's meat whistle is a great imitation to tie. It's fairly simple. Your classic woolly bugger with and without weight, where you have the marabou tail, chenille body, soft hackle ribbed about, and then weighted or unweighted on the front end.
And
Mini Leech
is the woolly bugger? Oh, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say is the woolly bugger the greatest flyer of all time, or what do you think is
it's one of them?
Yeah,
I honestly think for streamers it probably is. I mean, there's so many good patterns, but it's universal. It can be large or small, and
yeah.
the fish just eat them up. It's incredible how well that thing still works, and I'm a believer in the old school as new school, so that that can play a big part.
Totally.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool imitations to use now, but I think it's just time on the device to get used to them. And I tell you what, though, Dave, honestly, the biggest tip that I can give somebody in tying streamers, just make sure that you have a strong hook, because it is unbelievable. Even when you think there's strength, get online, talk to others, see what hooks like mustads or predator hooks or Gamakatsus, whatever it is, make sure that you've tested the hook or you've spoken with others. Because some of these fish, especially if you hook into just a giant, these fish can straighten those hooks out. And even a nice quality fish, 20 inches long, that fish, when it's hitting your streamer with force and power matched with the speed of the current, there's nothing worse when your hook straightens out.
Yeah, that is tough.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Okay, yeah, that's another good tip. So, yeah, and thinking about, we've talked a little bit about, I guess, some of your books and some of the articles. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what you've published out there, and maybe what you have coming up, or I guess you've got a couple things in the works now. But what are the books so far you have out there?
Yeah, so my first publication was How to Catch the Biggest Trout of Your Life with Wild River Press, and that came out in 2006. After that was Sight Fishing for Trout with Stackpole Books in 2007, and then Colorado's Best Fly Fishing with Headwaters Books, and that was in 2010. My last book was 101 Trout Tips, and that was a fun book to do because it was based on guiding and journal notes over the years and putting pros and tips and all these different sequences and situations that we're put into. And then 2 projects I have coming out, which I'm really excited about. The first one is the book, which is The Hunt for Giant Trout, 25 top locations in the U.S. to catch a trophy. And then my video, which will be coming out, which is Mastering the Short Game, and that's due out in January. And that's underwater techniques where a lot of the fish that we encounter are within 20 feet or less. So those are 2 new projects coming out, in addition to some bugs and some other talks and presentations and whatnot for the upcoming show season with the Fly Fishing Show and some other clubs. But it's fun, and I have to give credit to everybody. When we read these books, I didn't realize it until I started publishing things with articles and books. There's so many great people behind these projects that it really is a testament to not only the community, but the great minds that come together. So I'm just thankful I'm able to do it. And hopefully people learn some tips and tricks like we're discussing here in the show.
No, it's good. I've talked to a number of publishers and editors now on this show. And it's been cool to hear the stories because you hear you hear the different stories. I mean, I had I mentioned John Gierach on, and he was he publishes on the Fly Fish Journal. He writes there.
Right.
Actually, Steve Duda, who I had on, has actually moved on. Now he's not the editor now, but he mentioned when he was the editor that everything that John sends in is just perfect. Like there's no editing, nothing needs to be done. And he said it's just amazing because most of the time stuff comes in, you got to do some, there's some work you got to do to it. So it just shows you, and you being behind writing the books. I mean, what did that feel like, for you when you got your first book published?
It was an amazing feeling. It was also probably the most nervous I've ever been in my life because when you put something on paper to yourself, it's your opinion and facts to yourself. But when people read this, you're nervous in how they'll react or how they'll judge your work. But what I've found to be very helpful, and this is what's allowed me to continue to write, is that I write based on what I see and what I learn on the water. So when I do articles or I'm doing books, I'm not just trying to, do something that's recycled. I'm trying to evolve and at that same note, supply new techniques and things that I see. So that's very helpful because I'm not a storyteller per se. I'm more of a technique and strategy type of guy. Mm-hmm. And that's why I enjoy reading, Gierach's work and even Ed Engel's work. Ed was more of a technical writer and still is, but from the beginning when I used to read his articles, I always, learned from them and then also could switch over and read a story from John. And I really think that's what's fun about it is you're learning and advancing. And now it seems like a lot of the information that's out on the market from other good guides and other individuals that are doing the same thing, like George Daniel and those who are teaching on the water, in addition to the text, is that we're just kind of reliving our guide trips and reliving those moments on the water.
Cool. Yeah, I wanted to touch on, you mentioned the 25 top locations. I had a question there, but before I get into that, I just want to note, you mentioned a couple of your different publishers you've had. Now, you've had multiple publishers and different books?
Well, I started out with Wild River Press, and Tom Pirro was kind enough to give me the opportunity, and he's a great man, and he was really kind in helping me out and teaching me a lot about layout and text. And then from there, I started working with great individuals like Ross Purnell, John Randolph with Fly Fishermen. And the biggest mentor and friendship I've gained over the years is with Jay Nichols, who is the acquisition editor for the fly fishing department with Stackpool Books. And he owns Headwaters Books and also Headwaters Media Group, who my video's coming out with. But he's responsible, and I'm not kidding, for it has to be at least 50-60% of the books we see on the market, from Popovic to Renee Harrop to Lefty Cray. He's behind the text with all these individuals. And it really was nice because when I got on board after Wild River Press, I did my work through Stackpool and Headwaters Books with Jay, and then doing articles with Ross Purnell at Fly Fisherman and John Randolph. And Ross Purnell's another great individual in our sport that with Fly Fisherman, he's done amazing things and really, helping pass the torch, but also allowing us to teach through his pages with, the techniques we use on the water. So it's just been fun with those two publishing groups and really just having that opportunity to work through text.
Wow, yeah, I didn't realize that Nichols had that much influence. That's pretty cool. I guess that's why you see his name. You definitely see his name. Well, you've seen his name out there for a long time.
Yeah, no, it's great, and they're anglers. They're good guys. I mean, watching Ross and Jay and Randolph and Jeff Mueller and all these other great editors, and I think Jeff's with the Drake now, and I mean, it's amazing watching them on the water and then watching what they can do with words, because for myself, I'm an angler first, trying to become a writer, and other individuals like Gierach and Ed Engel, I believe they're writers that became anglers, so
they are.
We don't all have that same connect.
No, and that's what Gierach said last week. He said that, people ask him that a lot. Are you more of a writer or a fly fisher, or however it is, or fly fisherman first? And he basically says, well, I'm a writer first. And that kind of, a lot of people are like, oh, kind of sad. But I kind of look at that thinking like, yeah, it makes sense. He's an amazing writer. Yeah.
Absolutely. My hat goes off to him. I mean, it's so difficult to write and try to express what you want to say on paper or in the keys. I mean, it seems easy when you think about it, but when you truly break it down and you try to express what you teach verbally on the water, sometimes you feel like you're going to pull your hair out. It's almost impossible.
Totally. No, I hear you. Very cool. Well,
absolutely.
So I was thinking a little bit about, we've talked about some different books here. I mean, is there I guess if we keep it to streamers, or you can just maybe think of fly fishing for you, any books, magazines, or other resources that aren't your own that have either been a big influence or something you like reading?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. For me, Kelly Gallup's work with streamers was a huge benefit. Reading the recent articles from Blaine Chocolate was a big help. Dave Whitlock's resource with bugs and his aquatic book was just incredible about insects.
Oh,
yeah. I think now too, just what I've also learned a ton from is going to presentations myself. I'm a public speaker and I do a lot of shows and I teach and give back, but I also attend presentations myself to this day. And just when I see a name or somebody that I think I can connect with, I'll get online and research and find out what articles they've done and where they're going to be presenting at and sit down during their talks. And that really has helped out a bunch. And I think that information alone is enough to really, help individuals become better anglers. And the other thing I want to mention too is, as a full-time guide, I've also learned the benefit of being on the water with anglers and hearing them express how much it helps them. I myself will also do guide trips with other guides and spend time with them on the boat and see how they work and what they do and take that information and, try to remain a student myself. So that really is kind of the gist of just trying to maintain and gain more knowledge over the years.
Yeah, cool. So now if you let's take it back to the beginning. So you've got somebody out here listening who is pretty new, maybe is, fly fish for a few years, but hasn't really done the streamers, and they're heading out to one of their streams. And, are there any, they get their rod, they've got their stuff. Do you think anything we didn't cover as far as getting out there and finding those fish, or, any other, I'm just thinking, I think for me, what you've talked about is kind of covered it all, but I'm just, again, it seems like, you got this big fly, what size, what color, and I guess like you said earlier, you break it down and start simple.
Right.
Pick one of those flies and get out there and try it. And if you're not hooking fish, then change up your change up either the fly or the casting angle. I mean, do you start with one or the other?
Yeah, just start. I would say start light and dark. Try targeting water where fish feel safe. Structure deep runs. And the other thing is the psyche. Really put yourself in the right frame of mind to where, if you don't get a tug or the fish doesn't take, don't give up. And just remember, what I teach anglers with streamers is that you have to have that confident moment where you build confidence because you saw a fish chase your streamer, or you had a fish hit your streamer, or the best case scenario is you land a fish on a streamer. But that moment when you know that the fish is reacting to what you're doing, from that moment, that's when you start the building blocks. So I think it's just a matter of going out, attempting, but not giving up, and just really building that confidence. But light and dark, adjust the retrieve, and cover water, and you'll have that moment where that fish does come and chase, and hopefully they take, and you can land that fish.
Okay, nice. Now I want to get back to the book you mentioned. It was at 25 top locations.
Yeah. So the Hunt for Giant Trout, 25 top locations in the U.S. to catch a trophy. And that book's going to be out in December. There's some great information and resource. And really the beauty of that book is 50 anglers contributed to the title. So it's going to be a big one with a lot of great names and, and great information and resources.
Gotcha. That's cool.
Yeah. It's going to be a cool project. And then the video is also great. With Jay Nichols, we filmed for 3 years from Pennsylvania to Argentina, and we captured all the video footage, and we're making, it's in the final stages now, the instructional video, which displays in 4K at slow speeds to where we go over drives, nymphs, and streamers. And we use these techniques in Pennsylvania, Colorado, Tennessee, Montana, and Argentina, so people can really see from east to west to even, to other areas and locations around the globe how these techniques work. But the key there is 20 feet or less. I mean, so many of the fish we encounter are within 20 feet or less, whether it's fishing or when the fish finally does take.
Yeah, that is a great point, regardless of the species. It seems like, yeah,
Yeah.
you definitely got to start in close and fish the water right at your feet first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there'll be a lot of information. I have some articles in the pipeline that will come out next year with fly fishermen, and I'll have information on my website. And I also do a newsletter. Anybody's welcome to sign up for it through my website at landonmayer.com, where all it is a way for me to give back. I just do a guide tip every month, and then I list the events in addition to that guide tip of where I'll be presenting or teaching a class. So you're welcome to sign up for that if you'd like, and that way I can let you know and be notified of when these projects are going to come out.
Oh, cool. And you get around kind of East Coast, West Coast, all over, or do you stay in more specific areas?
No, I do a lot of traveling. I'll be at the fly fishing show with the fly fishing show that's ran by Ben Ferensky. It's a great show, awesome opportunity to move around. So I'll be at the Denver show this winter. I'll be at the New Jersey show and the Atlanta show. And then in addition to those, I'll also be at numerous clubs traveling about. And then I'll be locally at the International Sportsman's Expo in Colorado as well.
Okay. All right. Nice. Well, I have, just a couple more questions here before I let you get out of here. And
Sure.
So we definitely talked a little about some of the rivers you fish and getting a feel for it. I was kind of thinking, when you mentioned the location, the top 25 location, I've had this conversation before, and it's, that conversation about like kind of as the pressure increases. In fact, I think John said that last week, as more people get out fishing. What do you feel like is, as people write about these areas, is there anything to be concerned about, as far as kind of a little too much pressure in some of these areas, or how do you balance that when you're writing a book like that?
No, that's a great question. And it's absolutely true. I mean, you have to be careful. I think myself, and this is where I come into the factor of trying to become a writer as I'm an angler, just continuing to do that every year. And my thought behind that was, this book is not based on the location, like here's the fly, here's the fishery, go catch fish. It's more of inside the mind of the individual that is on that water full time. And for me, it's more of that. It's trying to teach the technique that's used on that water. So maybe when you go there, you can have success yourself. But also, if you take that technique back to your home water, you can find more success that way. So it's not, I don't believe in hot spotting where you try to give up a location. This is where I caught a fish. This is where you should go fish. I think, the best way to approach the industry now is, how was that fish caught? And can I use that technique, or can I try to tweak that technique to where I can use it on my home waters? And that really is, I think, the key component, because the growth in the sport now, it's not going to stop, and it's a good thing. But I think the more anglers that approach the water with stealth and with selective thought in mind, the less fish that are spooked, the more opportunities we all have. And that really is my goal as a guide, is to try to teach anglers so we all have more thought. That way we're spooking less fish and eventually find more success.
Yeah, and you mentioned the word industry, and I actually had a conversation here today with a person out in the audience who listens to the show here, and they mentioned, it's kind of funny, I'd like to get your take on it, like the word industry, I mean fly fishing industry,
Sure.
right? And his take on it was, he was just kind of like, and I actually, to upfront, people who listen to this know that I've said fly fishing industry a lot. It's just kind of feels like trying to talk about what we're in, but it was kind of his pet peeve, and he was like, what, I hate hearing the industry word, making it sound like it's some corporate thing, where he wishes I would say more like fly fishing culture. And it kind of got me thinking,
He's right.
Yeah, do you think that's, I mean, I wonder, and I know that a number of people that are in it, that talk about it, use the word industry, but how do you feel about that?
No, I think that's true. That's a very valid point, and I'm guilty, and others are guilty when you are working and trying to develop and also think about making this a career, or if it is your career, then we all get caught up in the terms and the slang that it's common for us to use that. But that's true. I mean, it is a culture, and it is fun. I mean, I would say it's one of my goals moving forward is to try to think of it more of, it's a sport in my opinion.
Yeah, sport.
It's not an industry. I think it's a sport. it's an activity, a therapeutic right for all of us to be able to go out and enjoy the water. So culture is a great term, and sport's a great term, and just fishing in general. And then that's 100% true, because it's not corporate. That's not the right way to think about it at all. I think it's more of just developing, and really what I find in fly fishing is that there's so many of us that we all become students again, and that's where we all have that connection, which is cool.
Yeah, no, I think you said it well there. That's for sure. Students is we're all. I mean, that's I think what we all love about it, right? That we're always going to be learning.
Exactly. And once you think you know it all, that's when you eat some humble pie and you go, oh, okay, back to the drawing board.
That's right. Nice. Okay, well, so now the South Platte, I mean, we talked a little bit about it, but is there anything else you want to note just on that river? I know there's probably a few people maybe that fish that area, and want to, as far as when you put streamers together, anything we didn't cover? I know you covered a lot today.
Yeah, no, I think we're in good shape. I mean, I think, for myself on the South Platte, it's a tailwater drainage, but these techniques can also be applied on freestones, small and large waterways. The techniques are also used in still waters. And when you're doing still waters, rivers, or freestones, I think the biggest thing is trying to get the flies to the fish. And the only other thing I can think of that we didn't really key in on was other waterways in the sense of freestones and still waters. But the same technique, and the biggest thing I think there is just depth control. And that's really the challenge with streamers is how do I keep my fly towards the surface? How do I get my fly deep towards the bottom, and trying to maximize the use of different lines, weighted streamers, unweighted streamers, and just understanding the flow or the depth of the still water. But really just trying to maximize depth control is key. And the way to do that in the start is with fly lines and flies, and then trying to develop a tier system from there.
Cool. No, that's well put. And my one little quick question here, as far as we talked a little bit about gear, do you have a non-fly fishing piece of gear that is like your go-to item whether you're traveling or out there that you kind of don't leave home without?
I do. It's funny, but it's one of those foam noodles that you use in a swimming pool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So somebody showed me this trick at a show 5 years ago, but if I cut that noodle in the same length as a water bottle, I can wrap my pre-rigged flies on it and stick it in my water bottle holder of my fanny pack.
Oh, wow. There you go.
Yeah.
That's a sweet,
So that's a cool one to pass on. But no, people see me buying noodles at the store, and, hopefully I don't run into a fellow angler. And
well,
if it's not the summer season, you're like, where are they?
Exactly. No, I'll have to. My kids love those things, so I'll have to take you up. Okay. So, and you note anything else in the next 6 to 12 months that you're going to be doing that you didn't cover here today?
No, I think that's it. I mean, I'm going to be doing a lot of great things through the website and shows, and I'm just excited to see everybody at the events and wish everybody success on the water. And I'm truly thankful that you had a chance to put me on your show, Dave. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on, and I think I haven't really talked about streamers yet, so this is a great start to hopefully I'll have some more guests on to talk about it. And, if anybody,
awesome.
If they want to find you, I guess is the LandonMayer.com the best place? Or I guess Instagram, right, at Landon Mayer Fly Fishing?
You bet, yeah. So the website's LandonMayer.com. I'm on Instagram at Landon Mayer Fly Fishing. Facebook is Landon Mayer Fly Fishing on Facebook. And on my website, just go to the contact page and you can reach me under guided trips or comments or speaking engagements. That's a good way to find me there. And then my information from there is listed on the website for contact by phone. And if you don't reach me, usually I am on the water. If not on the water, then I'm at home with the kiddos and the family. And then once they go to bed, I'll be losing sleep about more and larger trout, hopefully.
That's right. Yeah, we didn't get into the kids. I know you've got 4 kids, so I'd love to hear maybe next time some tips on how you're getting your kids active and keeping them away from the devices.
Yeah.
That's always a good challenge.
No, that's a good one. Maybe we could do a show in the future about tips for youth, because I think that's an important thing to always get back. And it is a challenge and a fun experience. Sometimes you're casting flies. Sometimes you're catching bullfrogs, but it's all worthwhile.
That's right. That's right. All right, Landon, I'll let you get out of here. Just wanted to, thank you again for coming on and sharing your knowledge and all the resources. I think I love the historical perspective too. You kind of gave a shout out to a bunch of like old and new names that I'm going to do my best to put in the show notes, but I won't get all of them. So, if anybody has questions, I'll direct them to your website and have them connect with you. And we'll hope to see you out there soon and keep in touch.
That sounds great. I appreciate it again, Dave, and thanks to everybody out there, and wishing everybody a happy and successful fall.
All right. We'll see you soon.
Take care. Thanks a lot.
I had one big call to action for you this week. I have a little survey I want you to take if you have time. This will help me better understand who is listening out there and help me kind of guide more of the discussion. So the link will be in the show notes. It'll be at survey.lipson.com/wetflyswing. So don't worry about writing that down. Just go click over in the show notes and you'll see a link right at the top of the page. And that would help a ton. I'm going to run this survey here, and then I'll get the information together, and then I'll be able to better, like I said, direct the which way the show is going. It's right now, I think I'm hearing some positive feedback from everybody, but I would like to get a little more just kind of where's everybody coming from, and kind of the demographic, just basic demographic stuff. So thanks again for taking a little bit of time to do that, and look forward to talking to you soon. If you want to find all the show notes with all the links we covered, just go to wetflyswing.com/48. And I wanted to read one recent review from Dog Food Money on iTunes, all the way down in Australia. He says, Dog Food Money says, "Love this. I look forward to the conversations every week. Just great. So much passion." Thanks, Dog Food Money, for the great review. I read every one and appreciate if anyone else wants to leave one out there. Thanks again for stopping by to check out the episode today. I'm looking forward to catching up with you soon and hope to see you on the river or online.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com. And if you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes.